Hello and welcome back to Project ML. I just thought I would do a bit of a video on doing a full transmission system fluid change. Some I'm going to do in the conventional way, others I'm not, simply to not create too much hassle for myself. Now, number one, I'll go through what we've got here. So, the front and rear diffs on these W163 Mercedes, so we had type of oil, it's a 7585. If you go into Mercedes to buy oil for these, this is the company who makes it. So make a note of that. I use this stuff all the time, as well as which I showed you, remember, the MPM oil for the Chrysler and stuff. So what we're going to do is, I've had a look, some of the plugs are in awkward places on the front diff and that, so I'm going to do a bit of testing first to see if I can get tubes and pipes in to refill them. I'll go into more detail when I'm underneath. And obviously the automatic gearbox fluid has to be this here, the Mercedes approval 236.14. This is the right stuff you need. So I've actually got 8 litres because it says about 9 from a full drain, but you would never get that out. And also I've got one of each of these, which is about 1 litre for the front and rear differentials. Also, when I ordered these, I thought I had enough left over to do the transfer box, which is just normal ATF. So I'll go through what the issue is in a minute, but I have got 1 litre left in here, and that does meet the right specification anyway. So basically the transfer box on these automatic ones just use an automatic gearbox fluid about 1 litre. Right, what I was planning was doing was cracking the sump on the gearbox sump and draining it out, but it's absolutely bone tight, and I'll show you underneath in a moment. It's a tiny little Allen key, so if that strips or if it cracks, it's game over. The car's off the road. So I must admit, the gearbox on this car's perfectly fine. It drives nice and it's never had a hard life. So and the only other way around it is I've got the suction device on down the dipstick, and I've managed to get, I actually spilt a little bit before, I've managed to get 4 litres out. So what my plan is, obviously I've got 4 litres, and this is a better way as well because I know that the levels were fine beforehand. So I'm simply going to put in 4 litres, which is one of those, run it for about a month, suck the same amount back out again, and then put the other one in. And then by doing that, it's not the ideal way of doing it, but you've kind of flushed the system through with 4 litres of new oil, and then another 4 litres of new oil. You're as good as you're going to get without going overboard on the sump and knacking something up. So what I'm going to do now is, that's as much as I can get out through the dipstick. As you can see, it's just an oil pump. Goes down the dipstick. These are brilliant, these, for cutting a lot of new... In fact, I'm saying that this is the way a lot of dealerships would do it, because a lot of new gearboxes don't even have a drain plug. That is the way you actually drain them off or remove sumps. Same with a lot of new cars that don't even have a dipstick or sump plugs on some cars. So it's a great device. It's even on diesels for priming the diesel systems when you change the filter. Great. So what I'm going to do now, you don't need to really watch us do it. It's a bit of a long process. Again, it's just a little tiny funnel in there, and I'm going to have to sit and patiently pour 4 litres without spilling it down into the gearbox. And then I'll come back here when I'm underneath, and I've got... when I do some of the other bits that I'm going to do. Right, so that's the 4 litres gone in. You end off with a dead arm, trying to pour it carefully as you can down the dipstick. So now, that's what's been put in to what I've took out. And it was, I forgot to mention, this is something else you'll need, which I already have, is a Mercedes-Benz automatic transmission dipstick. Don't worry, you'll find that are a bit too long, but what matters is like that it goes into the bottom, and you'll find it'll probably come about 3/4 of the way up. That's just for different models. So I'll put that down. So what we need to do, obviously I'll show you this as well. You'll notice obviously they don't have a dipstick. You've got this device, so that pops over when you're done, and this little plastic piece locks it into place. Mercedes-Benz say you've got to change these, but they're perfectly fine to reuse. All you've got to use is like a little hook just to get this locking tab out, and then that way you can reuse them as many times as you want. It's absolutely no reason whatsoever to have to keep changing them. It's just another way for them to make money. So what we need to do now, start it up, let it get up to temperature. I mean, I'm doing this out of precaution, but I know the level was fine beforehand. So I started up, Obviously it's on a lift, I've got to be careful keeping the foot on the brake, work it through reverse, neutral, drive, and through as many of the different gears, 4, 3, 2, 1, and then back to park, dip the dipstick. Remember, you must always check your automatic gearbox fluid when the engine is running and up the temperature, and if it'll focus in on this, they'll always give you 2 readings. On this one, it's got a mark from 1 to 12, and on the other side, it's from when the gearbox is above 80 degrees, as in warm, or below 25 degrees, which is cold. What you really can do is plug in the diagnostic equipment, wait till it gets up to the right temperature, and then you can get a good reading then. So I'm going to do that now. I haven't got the stand at the garage today. It's pointless standing watching an engine running. I'll dip it once it gets up to temperature, and then we'll move on to the differentials and the transfer box. I suppose I'll show you the process inside the car, just in case anybody isn't sure of what I mean. I've got to be very careful with this car on the lift. If it lurches forward, there'll be big problems. So clearly, handbrake on, foot firmly on the brake. Move it into reverse. Just leave it a few seconds. Neutral. Leave it a few seconds. Drive. Use the Tiptronic. If you look there. 4th gear. 3rd gear. Leaving it in between few seconds. 2nd gear. 1st gear. Back up. 2nd, 3rd, 4th, drive, neutral, let it settle, reverse, then in this case, back to neutral, foot off the brake, and I'm going to go now and check it, and I'll see where it is, and I'll come back to you. Yes, so obviously the temperature now, it's just basically in the middle, because obviously the temperature is over 25, so you ideally want it to be halfway in between, which it was. So now I'm going to move on to the differentials in the transfer box. Right, well, I'm back with a carp on the lift. I'll just quickly show you with the automatic transmission sump. Was this tiny, I mean, look at the screw on the back of this lamp. It's not much bigger than that, and it was bone tight. So I ain't going to touch it. I'm going to give a bit more paint to this sump. If that was to snap, be big problems. Looks a bit easier on the transfer box here. So you've got, don't worry, I've been spraying oil on these. Drain, fill, nice and simple like that. But you do know the golden rule. I hope everybody knows this rule. Is always make sure that your fill plug will come loose. It's not stripped or seized before you drain it. Otherwise, you're up shit creek, basically. And I know a few people have done that. They just drop the oil straight out and then find that the fill plug is defective, stripped, seized, and then you really are knackered. To the back, the rear diff doesn't look too bad. You've got your drain plug. Of course, in the most awkward place possible, there's your fill plug. So again, with this, before I drain it, I'm actually going to try and get the vacuum pump in and see how much I can get out. Maybe over the top, you can just see it through there, I think. Maybe try and get the vacuum line through there and see if I can get a straw through, as well as just dropping them out, which I'll show an example on the front. If you want to just drain all this off and realise you have to do something daft, like have a special tool or drop the subframe, again, you've given yourself problems. This front one looks a bit stupid. So obviously there we go, there's the drain, no problem. But you've got to get right in up on top of there to get to it, which there's pipes and everything in the way. So, you know, there are just a few things that we've got to go through. So I'll pause out now and see how I get on and get back to you. So there you can go. There you go. Obviously, make sure the fill one comes off. This is your sump to drain, which it's slack. Clearly, I can't do this. I've got the proper drainer, but I'm just going to use a little bucket just so I can assess what's coming out better. And I'll get back to you when it's draining. So there we go. That's it draining out. Doesn't look too bad, but it's all the properties within it which obviously degrade over time. So obviously we'll get that changed. Bearing in mind your transfer box, this takes a lot of load. This splits the power from the front wheels to the rear. So it's important to do the gearbox and the transfer box. I've mentioned these rear diffs use a 75, 80, 85. So it's a lot more thick, gloopy oil that comes out of these. So it's usually a lot more difficult to put the oil back into them. So I'll come back to you and I'll update how things get on once I've gotten the new oil in. One other thing I just thought I would add as well with these, it doesn't harm to put a little bit of thread tape on before putting them on. I mean, they're an interference fit, these. They go, obviously, they're smaller at the bottom than the top. But sometimes it's not put a little tiny bit of thread tape or sealant on them. But do not go overboard. You get that into the gearbox and it will cause big problems. Right, so there we go. I've got the plug out of the rear diff. And also when you look up there, that's the filler, which we're quite lucky we'll be able to get the tube through and over and fill in through that way. But I'm not hoping anything for the front one, because that looks like I've got to disturb a lot of very expensive corroded looking power steering pipes, so that may get left for another day. So I'll get back to you when I've done this. Another top tip again with this stuff, the automatic gearbox oil is fine because it's very lightweight to start with, but this stuff, it's a lot more gloopy. If you've got a little fan heater, or if it's a hot day, put it inside the car, put it out in the sun, or put it in front of a little heater, and it makes it so much easier to get into the car. Believe it or not, excuse that, just fell over. It will be getting cleaned before using it. But you know what it is? An old can and a straw. You can buy all these fancy fillers and everything, and then it costs a fortune. Just keep it good, clean. Obviously, you have to clean it out when you use different fluids with a straw in the end of it. Then obviously you just pour that into there and then squeeze it into the bottle through into the hole. So I'll get back to you soon when I get this bottom nut tightened up. Something else I just thought I would add as well, the bottom drain plug of most gearboxes and stuff, they sometimes come with a magnet, or even if not, if they sit directly at the bottom, naturally that's the lowest point. And just do a little observation. This was actually really clean, but if there's any metal filings or anything like that, then that gives you a good indication of the condition of your gearbox, your differential, transfer box, etc, etc. So I'm quite pleased with how clean that was. So this has got a rubber seal on it. It's probably never been off. I'm still gonna put a new one on just to be sure. So I'll get back to you when we fill the diff up. Right, so that's the rear diff topped up, done. Obviously, when you get them tightened like that, give them a bit of a spray with brake cleaner. Check for any leaks. I can't even see the filler plug up there. Take it for a drive. Once it's up to temperature, check again for any leaks. See with the transfer box there. Dry as a bone. We didn't touch that, so we don't need to check. And like I've mentioned with the front diff, that's going to get done another day. I was going to do some of the brake pipes at the front, so maybe when I've got them pipes out the way, I've got a litre of fluid left over, I'll do it then. So there you go, there's a bit of advice on doing the fluid change on a W163. And as you can see down there, I'm going to follow this video on. It may not link up, but I've got a set of roof bars and a roof box to fit. So I've already shown how to fit a tow bar, do the fluid changes, roof bars. So if you keep tuned, it's pretty much the same for these as any other car, really, like that Astra there. Any car with the roof rails on, the bars fit the same. Thanks for watching, like, comment and subscribe, and I'll catch you next time.